The Super Outbreak of 1974 begins. On April 3rd and 4th, 1974, the United States experienced one of the largest tornado outbreaks in recorded history. Over 2 terrifying days, 148 confirmed tornadoes tore across 13 states, from the deep south to the Ohio Valley. Entire towns were leveled, families torn apart, and entire communities reduced to rubble. This event became known as the Super Outbreak of 1974, a name forever burned into the pages of weather history. Among the many tornadoes that struck, one of the most violent formed near Rainsville, Alabama. Classified as an F5, it represented the highest possible rating on the Fujita scale, capable of unimaginable destruction. Rainsville's story is not just about one tornado, but about a day when nature unleashed its fury on a scale that few had ever seen before. What unfolded on that April afternoon remains one of the darkest chapters in Alabama's history. Morning of April 3rd, a day like no other. The morning of April 3rd seemed deceptively calm to many residents across northern Alabama. Children went to school, farmers tended their land, and families went about their routine. But high above, the atmosphere was brewing with instability. A massive clash of warm, moist Gulf air collided with cold, dry air sweeping down from the north. Meteorologists began issuing warnings early, recognizing the rare and violent setup developing across the region. Still, few could have predicted just how catastrophic this day would become. In towns like Rainsville, Scottsboro, and Huntsville, people carried on with business as usual, unaware of the looming catastrophe. The skies grew darker by late morning, with thickening clouds signaling something unusual. Radios crackled with alerts, but many dismissed them as tornado warnings were not uncommon in this part of the country. However, the scale of the outbreak was already unfolding across neighboring states. By noon, reports of twisters in Kentucky and Tennessee reached Alabama. What seemed like distant storms would soon be at their doorstep. The atmosphere was primed for destruction, and time was running out. Every minute brought the people of Rainsville closer to a nightmare. Storm systems gathered across the south. By early afternoon, the weather had taken a sinister turn across the southern United States. Radar systems, primitive compared to modern technology, showed clusters of powerful supercells forming. The entire region was under siege as violent thunderstorms began spawning tornadoes one after another. In Alabama, the air grew heavy, with winds shifting unpredictably, a sure sign of instability. Meteorologists were overwhelmed, issuing warnings as fast as reports poured in, but the outbreak was spreading too quickly. For residents of Rainsville, the skies to the west turned a sickening shade of green, a color often associated with violent hail and tornadoes. Thunder rumbled across the valleys, shaking windows and rattling nerves. Families huddled around radios, listening for updates, some beginning to prepare for the worst. Across DeKalb County, law enforcement braced for incoming emergencies, knowing resources were already stretched thin. The sense of dread thickened as reports of fatalities from earlier tornadoes spread. It was becoming clear that this was not an ordinary outbreak. It was something far more catastrophic. The monster destined for Rainsville was growing stronger by the minute. Its birth was inevitable, and its path of destruction would soon be carved into history. The monster tornado forms near Alabama. By mid-afternoon, the storm that would unleash the Rainsville tornado began rotating violently. Spotters on the ground confirmed a funnel descending, twisting down from the darkened sky like a vengeful serpent. Within moments, it touched the ground, widening rapidly into a wedge-shaped monster. This was not an ordinary tornado. It was an F5, the most violent class imaginable. The roar of the storm was deafening, often described as louder than a freight train combined with a jet engine. Witnesses said the ground seemed to tremble as the beast advanced, devouring everything in its path. Trees were uprooted and shredded into splinters. Homes exploded into debris, and vehicles were hurled into the air. Power lines snapped, plunging communities into darkness even in the middle of the day. The tornado carved a swath through DeKalb County, bearing down on Rainsville with unimaginable fury. People scrambled for shelter, diving into basements, storm cellars, or makeshift hiding places. For many, it would not be enough. The storm grew wider, stronger, and more relentless with every passing second. Its path toward Rainsville was now certain. Rainsville faces the fury. When the tornado reached Rainsville, it unleashed destruction on a scale rarely witnessed in human history. Homes were not just destroyed, they were obliterated, swept completely off their foundations as if they had never existed. Asphalt was torn from roads, leaving raw earth exposed. Cars and trucks were thrown hundreds of yards, some wrapped around trees, others reduced to twisted metal. The sheer violence stunned even veteran storm chasers and meteorologists. Entire families vanished in an instant, their homes erased by winds too powerful to resist. Survivors recalled being lifted into the air, battered by flying debris, and tossed like rag dolls across fields. The tornado reduced neighborhoods into wastelands of rubble, with nothing recognizable left standing. Churches, schools, and businesses were flattened in seconds. The sky rained shards of wood, glass, and metal as the monster chewed through the town. The human toll was devastating, lives lost in seconds, futures shattered, and memories erased. Rainsville, once a thriving Alabama community, was reduced to silence and ruin. The storm left behind not just destruction, but heartbreak beyond measure. Homes and lives, erased in minutes. The aftermath in Rainsville was almost impossible to comprehend. Streets no longer existed, landmarks were erased, and entire neighborhoods had vanished. Families searched desperately for loved ones, many trapped beneath rubble. Emergency crews arrived quickly, but the destruction was so extensive that even finding roads was a challenge. Survivors stumbled through the debris in shock, their faces covered in dust and blood. Some carried the wounded in their arms, while others dug frantically with bare hands to free the trapped. Stories of unimaginable loss began to spread. Families wiped out, children gone, and lives forever shattered. It was as though a bomb had detonated in the heart of the community. The sheer power of the tornado was evident in every direction. Foundations swept bare, trees stripped of bark, and steel beams twisted like straws. For those who lived through it, the memory would never fade. The tornado had come and gone in mere minutes, but it left behind scars that would last a lifetime. The people of Rainsville would never forget April 3rd, 1974. Survivors' nightmares began. In the hours after the tornado, survivors faced unimaginable grief and hardship. Those who crawled from the ruins found themselves in a world that no longer resembled home. The familiar streets were gone, replaced with endless fields of wreckage. Some searched frantically for missing relatives, their cries echoing through the silence. Others sat in stunned disbelief, unable to process the scale of the destruction. Emergency shelters quickly filled with the injured and homeless. The smell of smoke, gas leaks, and broken wood filled the air. Nightfall brought even more terror as darkness cloaked the ruins and rescue efforts grew harder. Survivors feared additional storms, their nerves shattered by the day's violence. Memories of the tornado haunted them, the sound, the chaos, the unimaginable force of the winds. For many, the psychological wounds cut as deep as the physical ones. Their nightmares had only just begun. Emergency response and chaos. Rescue efforts in Rainsville and surrounding areas were immediate but overwhelmed. Emergency crews, volunteers, and neighbors rushed to help, but the devastation was beyond anything they had trained for. Hospitals overflowed with the injured, and makeshift triage centers were established in schools and churches that had survived. Roads were blocked by debris, slowing the arrival of outside help. Communication lines were down, making coordination nearly impossible. Helicopters were brought in to airlift the most critical patients. Entire communities across northern Alabama were pleading for aid simultaneously, stretching resources thin. Still, heroes emerged neighbors, risking their lives to save others, doctors working around the clock, and ordinary citizens turning into rescuers. The chaos was unmatched, but so too was the determination to survive. The people of Rainsville, though broken, refused to give in to despair. In the darkest hours, humanity shone through the storm's shadow, the aftermath and national shock. News of the Rainsville tornado spread rapidly across the nation. Images of flattened neighborhoods and grieving families shocked the public. The scale of the Super Outbreak became clear. Towns destroyed, hundreds dead, and thousands injured across multiple states. President Nixon declared disaster zones, mobilizing federal assistance to the hardest hit regions. For Rainsville, national attention brought aid, but it could not heal the grief. The disaster prompted urgent conversations about weather preparedness, radar technology, and warning systems. Scientists studied the outbreak, seeking answers about how so many violent tornadoes could form at once. The tragedy became a turning point in tornado research, shaping the systems we rely on today. But for the people of Rainsville, no scientific advancement could erase their loss. They were left to pick up the pieces of shattered lives and rebuild from nothing. The scars of April 3rd would never fully fade. Legacy of the Rainsville tornado. Decades later, the Rainsville tornado remains etched in memory as one of the strongest in U.S. history. Its power serves as a reminder of nature's fury and the fragility of human life. Survivors continue to tell their stories, keeping alive the memory of those who perished. Communities across Alabama have rebuilt, but the lessons of 1974 remain deeply ingrained. Advances in radar, emergency communication, and storm shelters were driven by tragedies like this one. Rainsville became a symbol of resilience, proof that even in the face of overwhelming loss, people can rise again. The town has changed, grown, and healed, but every April brings back memories of that fateful day. The tornado was not just a storm, it was a defining event, one that shaped an entire generation. Its legacy lives on, both in science and in the hearts of those who remember. Psychological wounds that never healed. For many survivors of the Rainsville tornado, the deepest scars were not visible to the eye. Long after homes were rebuilt and debris cleared, the memories haunted those who lived through the storm. Children grew up with nightmares, reliving the terrifying sound of the roaring winds. Parents struggled with survivor's guilt, wondering why they were spared when neighbors were not. The trauma of losing loved ones in such sudden, violent fashion was a burden that weighed heavily for decades. Every dark cloud, every rumble of thunder would trigger fear, bringing back flashes of that April afternoon. Counselors were few, and mental health was rarely discussed openly in the 1970s, leaving many to suffer in silence. Communities learned that physical rebuilding was far easier than emotional recovery. Some survivors moved away, unable to remain in a place tied so closely to pain. Others stayed, determined to rebuild and honor the memory of those lost. The storm left invisible wounds, wounds carried in the hearts and minds of an entire generation. Changes in tornado research and warnings. The Rainsville tornado, along with the rest of the Super Outbreak, became a wake-up call for meteorologists and policymakers. The event highlighted how outdated technology and limited radar capabilities left communities vulnerable. At the time, Doppler radar was not yet widely deployed, and warnings were often vague or delayed. In the aftermath, federal funding for tornado research increased significantly. Universities and weather agencies began studying the atmospheric conditions that produce such violent twisters. The Fujita scale, used to measure tornado intensity, gained greater recognition and was applied more consistently nationwide. Emergency broadcast systems were strengthened, and siren networks expanded in vulnerable regions. The tragedy pushed science forward, ensuring that lessons from 1974 would save lives in the future. Today's storm tracking, with real-time Doppler radar and mobile alerts, can be traced back to the sacrifices of that era. The Rainsville tornado was more than just wind and destruction. It was a moment when lives changed forever. It showed us the terrifying power of nature, but also the unbreakable spirit of human resilience. From the ruins of April 3rd, 1974, came lessons that continue to protect us today. But we must never forget, storms like this can happen again. Preparation, awareness, and respect for nature's power are our greatest defenses. As we honor those who were lost, let us also commit to building safer, stronger communities for the future. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it so others remember, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful documentaries about the disasters that shaped history. Together, we keep their memory alive.